All right, hello everyone. Eric Marks here again with FindingMiddleEarth.com, and today I'm going to be doing my long-awaited full review on the Zeiss 21mm Milvus 2.8 prime lens. This is just a beautiful lens, especially if you're a landscape photographer like me. So we'll talk about this in just a minute. Before we get started, if you guys head over to my website at FindingMiddleEarth.com, click the big subscribe button in the top right. Pop your email in the box and you'll get access to a free 45-minute video covering all my landscape photography gear, my camera bags, my favorite lenses, all that stuff. And then also remember, for the rest of the month, my landscape photography post-processing and HDR blending course is on sale from $99 to only $25. It has over 10 hours of footage. I take you through step by step, teach you how to use Photoshop to leverage the best results possible out of your photos. So get that while you can, because it's probably not going to ever be a better price than that. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this lens. So a lot of you guys have seen me use this lens in my recent landscape photography vlogs. I've owned this for a month now, and you guys know I don't like reviewing products until I've used it for quite a bit. And I think I'm pretty comfortable to talk about this lens now, because I did own the previous version of this. I owned the Distortion, the one that was not the Milvus version. And I was very happy with that lens. There were just a few little cons that I had with that lens, but almost everything was just brilliant about that lens. So the reason I sold that lens is because I ended up not being able to justify the cost at one point. I just got the money for it and ended up getting another piece of glass. I ended up regretting getting that other piece of glass, and I've wanted one back ever since. So here I am with the Milvus version, and of course I always have my trusty iPhone with my notes so I can stay on track here. So the first category, let's talk about just the Zeiss Experience, okay? So it's an expensive lens, and the Experience, right, kind of makes you, it almost kind of uses marketing psychology to kind of make you, you know, not regret putting the money into the lens, right? So it comes in this nice box. There's another piece of the box on the ground there. And right when you get into the box, of course, they have this beautiful presentation with the blue foam, with a cutout for the lens, a separate cutout for the big, beautiful metal lens hood. They have Zeiss logos all over it. They have this little booklet explaining like the history of Zeiss, with these really happy looking people on a moon and using like Zeiss lenses and a microscope and all this stuff. And like, you know, you're like super happy. You're like, your new lens adrenaline is going through your body, and you know, you're digging the experience. But once all the fluff has gone away, I'm gonna put this down here. Once all that's gone away, is it really worth the money? That's what we're gonna talk about. So the first step here is, or the first category we're gonna talk about, is build quality and ergonomics. So in that category, I can tell you right now that the build quality on this lens is going to impress anybody. It's just built like a tank. It's an all-metal construction, except for the manual focus ring here is just a nice rubber. And I don't know if either one of these falls inside of, or if this falls inside of build quality or ergonomics, but I can tell you that the rubber on the manual focus lens, I was a little worried about it first for being a bad dust collector, because the original or the previous version that I did own, the Distortion, had a metal manual focus ring, and it wasn't too bad about collecting dust, but it definitely did collect its fair share. But I was really worried about it being rubber, because I thought I was going to collect every bit of dust in the world, and then it was going to end up getting inside the lens, and et cetera, et cetera. Somehow it doesn't collect dust at all. It's almost like it's almost like it has some kind of dust repellent on it. It just doesn't collect anything. Now, this whole lens will badly collect fingerprints because it's metal, but for some reason the rubber manual focus ring is actually quite nice at not collecting dust. Okay, another thing for build quality and ergonomics, I guess, is that the overall shape of the lens and the way it fits in my hand, even the length and depth of the lens, is just very nice. The manual focus ring just falls right where I need it to. Now, it is manual focus, and a lot of people are probably thinking, you know, it's going to be hard for me to make sure my photos are sharp in the field, so I'm just going to take a shot at every single, distance. And the reality is, with these Zeiss lenses, the best part about them is that the infinity, 99% of the time landscapes, I'm shooting at infinity. And so the infinity focus point, or the focus mark on the manual focus ring is right at the very, very end. So it clicks in, it's right there, you know it's infinity. Whereas on my old Nikkor 16-35 that I have been using for landscape photography, the infinity point is like all the way to the end and then like a hair back that way. And you don't really know where it is exactly because there's no clicks and there's no marks, but it's not at the very end. It's like at the very end and then just a hair turned back. And that's just, it's so annoying because I've tried to get that like perfect infinity and I'll come back to the studio before and it's just, there's just a hair out of focus on certain places and it drives me crazy. So I love that this is just an easy, throw it into infinity focus and you know you're solid, you're just good. It's a wide angle lens, so if you're shooting at f8 and you know what your minimum focus distance is, then anything from that distance out is gonna be in super sharp focus and you don't have to worry about anything. So it is not hard to shoot with a manual focus lens, especially a wide angle lens. It's actually quite awesome because you tend to pinpoint your focus a lot more instead of just rack a digital focus point around and just try to guess, which way is 1/3 of the way into the scene. This way you actually know. It has your hyperfocal distance scale. It has your manual aperture ring. Now let's talk about the aperture ring for a second. A lot of people might not know this, but I'm sure it's the same way for Canon, but on the Nikon DSLRs, because this one obviously is for Nikon F-mount. Before you put it on your lens, if you take the aperture ring all the way to f22, and then you hold this little button right here, and it just kind of clicks into place, that will allow you to mount this lens on your Nikon and control your aperture on your actual rubber aperture dial. So if I turn the lens or the camera on, you can see. Let me make sure the light's on. You can see I'm controlling the aperture from the actual rubber dial here, where you would control it on a non-manual lens. So that's really nice. I like that I don't have to reach under the lens for the aperture ring and the focus ring. That would be a little bit annoying, but easily, I could live with it. But I love being able to do the aperture here, just like all my other lenses, and then just fine-tuning the focus on the actual lens itself. Now let's talk a little bit about the manual focus ring. That'll play under the ergonomics category. So it's just incredible. I don't know what else to say. It is buttery smooth and just incredible. The focus throw on this is so beautiful. There's just this perfect tiny amount of tension. It's just the perfect amount of tension to be able to get to be able to pinpoint focus so easily, because when I first got the lens, I think I focused on something like mid-range. I just wanted to see if it was easy to focus on. So I took the camera into live view, punched in on the live view, and it was just amazing how easy it was to pinpoint the focus because it doesn't fly past the focus point. It's just got this beautiful tension that's very reminiscent of some cinema lenses that I've used, and it just eases into place, and I don't know what else to say about that. It's perfect. It is just perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about that. So the focus throw on this thing is absolutely beautiful. Okay, another thing with ergonomics and I guess build quality. So the lens hood here is, I like the way it clicks on. It's very easy to click on and click off. Those can be kind of a pain in the butt sometimes if I don't throw it off the table. But the nice thing about it is metal. So if you can hear in the microphone, it is actually a metal lens hood, which is nice. And in reality, this stays off most of the time because I have my filters and my filter holder on here. So speaking of filters, this thing does have an 82mm filter thread. Look at that beautiful element right there. So it's 82mm. I know that might be a little annoying for some people that are used to the standard 77mm, which is honestly why I got this lens, the 16-35 versus the 14-24, was so that I could use my 77mm filters on these. But if you have a good, if you're invested into a good filter holder system, I have the Format High-Tech stuff, and I have adapter rings galore. So I just use the 82mm adapter ring, and you're good to go. So no worries there. One little complaint, just a very tiny complaint that I have with this, is that the inside of the focus ring is made out of that like felt type material, and I hate it when they do that because that stuff actually does attract everything, like dust and lint and everything you can imagine will be stuck inside of this thing, and it's almost impossible to clean off. You can't use like a wet wipe to clean it off because then more stuff will stick to it. You can't use like a Zeiss lens wipe, or even blowing it off doesn't work very well. And that's just a little unfortunate because this is right there by the lens element. So if any dust makes its way down into the glass, you know, it could do that because this stuff just attracts dust like no other. So that is a little bit of a complaint there. Let's move on to the next category here. Oh, one other thing I forgot. Weather sealing. That was a big thing for me on the Milvus. So the previous version of this that I owned, the Distortion, did not have weather sealing. Now, it was a beautiful build. It was metal construction like this one, but it didn't have weather sealing. So it just meant that really more, you know, I wasn't at a peace of mind using that as my main landscape lens, going out into the elements and the humidity. I live in the North Georgia mountains, and it can get really humid up here in the spring and the summer. And even though I have a dehumidifier box over here, the humidity can just cause that moisture to just build up and fester inside some of these lenses. And so I have to be careful, if it's not a weather sealed lens, to go out in some of those environments. So this one is finally marketed as weather sealed. It has the beautiful blue weather sealing rubber ring around the mount, which is great. And while we have this off, we'll go ahead and leave it off so you can actually get an idea of what it looks like without being mounted on a body. I had it mounted on a camera body so you could also see how it looked on a camera body. But here's the lens just on its own. Okay, it's a pretty heavy chunk of glass. That's the last thing I was going to mention. So the weather sealing is great, but you know, if you're looking to like shave weight off of your landscape photography hiking kit, this is a quite the chunky, heavy piece of glass. It's definitely not. I mean, compared to the 16 to 35, it feels a good bit heavier than that. So yeah, I would definitely not recommend this if you're wanting to shave weight. All right, let's move on to the next. Let's see, the next category here is distortion. Okay, so a lot of times when you're buying wide angle lenses, all wide angle lenses have distortion of some sort. And distortion means, you know, how badly does it bow your verticals and how badly does it distort on the edges and the corners of the frame. And I can say, surprisingly, this is not very bad at all. There's almost no distortion, which is kind of unheard of because this Nikkor 16 to 35 has a fair bit of distortion that you can correct inside of, you know, Lightroom and Capture One. You can correct this stuff, but right out of the box, this thing does not have bad distortion issues at all. So on that, I would give it an A+. As far as the chromatic aberration, that's probably my favorite thing about the performance of the lens so far. And we'll get into the performance category, but chromatic aberration is almost non-existent on this. I've shot directly into the sun, like big backlit, high contrast trees, and I've had to zoom into like 300 or 400% to be able to see the chromatic aberration. And I would only really remove that if I was going to do a big print, but I mean, it's almost pointless to remove that at, you know, zoomed in that far. So chromatic aberration compared to these two, even though this isn't really a comparison video, worlds apart. So this lens is worth it just for that, because some chromatic aberration is just really a pain in the butt to try to go in and remove. But almost no chromatic aberration on this. So distortion is great. So that, I know that's what the category was about. And it's a really short category because there's not much else to say. It's just great. Now, if you want to download some raw files that I've shot from this lens, I think I have a couple of raw files you can download on my blog post review of this. So if you just click the link in the description, it'll shoot you over to my blog and you'll see a link where you can download some files. It'll be raw files from this paired up with my Nikon D810, which is kind of like the dream team pairing. So you guys can see how you like that. The next category I think is the most important one here. It's optical image quality and performance. So that's why we buy lenses, right? As far as that goes, I'll tell you right now, I was blown away when I got the first set of images out of this onto the computer. Excuse me, onto the computer. It was like looking at a 3D image. The natural contrast, the way it rendered the light and the color, I just couldn't believe it. The biggest thing to me was the contrast that this lens has. Just in the raw file, normally most of the raw files coming out of the D810 look very flat, and I expect that. This had so much beautiful contrast coming off of it. It had this great, just smooth rendition from where the light falls off and meets shadow. It's just great. So that I was very impressed with. Sharpness, insanely impressed with. Corner to corner from about f4 to f16 is almost flawless. f2.8, you have a little bit of light fall off, a little bit of softening in the corners, nothing crazy, nothing you can't fix in the raw processor, but I do like that this is 2.8 because I am going to try this out for some astrophotography here pretty soon, which I'll make a video on. But it's not bad quality by any means at 2.8. It's just not quite as sharp as f4 to f16. Obviously, your sweetest spot is going to be f8, f11. Those are going to be your absolute best point of the lens, as with any lens. Yeah, so from f4 to f16, I think the quality is just fantastic. The corners are crazy sharp, almost too sharp. I've noticed that some of the images that I've taken on this, I've been adding a Gaussian blur layer in Photoshop that I've used a blending mode to kind of overlay and kind of take that like hard digital edge off of the image. Because this is almost a little too sharp, which is crazy. This is basically a pixel peeper's dream, okay? Because you can zoom in at like 400% on a D810 and see amazing amounts of detail. I mean, I'm serious. Just looking at the D810 images shot with the 16 to 35 right next to the ones shot with the Zeiss here are worlds apart. Which you kind of expect, because this lens is what, around $1,000 now, and this lens is $1,843. So optical quality and performance I'm very happy with. Sticking from f4 to f16 are your sweet spots. It renders the sun star effects very nice. It has just impressed me. I'll say that. It's very, very much so impressed me. So I give it a big A+ for that. So that brings me to my last category here. The price of it brings me to my last category, which is value. So for value, we have to think, is $1,843, is it worth it? Is it well spent on this lens? I will say it depends on what you do with your images and how you shoot, okay? If you are a printer, if you are a fine art gallery, you own a gallery somewhere, you showcase your work, and your bread and butter is by traveling to galleries and selling fine art and printing exhibitions and all these things, this lens is going to impress the heck out of you, and it's going to take your game up a notch for sure, and you're going to be obsessed with it. Now, if you are a photographer that is strictly, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, your website, and you do some editorial work for some publications that just use like a 5x7 or 8x10 spread or something, in my opinion, take the $1,843, don't buy this lens, go and spend it on marketing. Market yourself. Pay for some Facebook ads, some Google ads, hire a videographer to make some videos of you, market your business. That's what you should use the money for. But if you are a printer and you use it for that, and you can actually justify this price, and you can see the results that this lens gives you on print, or there's some reason that you just need crazy amounts of resolution for a company that you're working for, that's where this lens comes in to play. Because with me, I do lots of printing, some of it to sell and some of it for just personal work. And I appreciate the best optical quality you can get out of a lens, and so that's what, it just really works for me quite well. So it fits into my workflow. And keep in mind, I got this a little bit before Christmas this year, or last year technically, 2017, when Zeiss did their rebate. And so I got this for $1,500. So I got it for $343 off. So that's why I picked it up. If it was $1,843 still, I still might not have pulled the trigger on it. But I saw it go on sale, and I knew the Zeiss stuff going off $300 and something off the price is very rare. So I picked it up and I thought, hey, there's a return policy if I don't like it, but man, I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I'm so obsessed with it that I ordered a NovaFlex adapter so that I can put this on my Fujifilm X-T2. Because that'll be interesting to see the quality it renders from the X-Trans sensor. I'm actually really excited about that. I'll do a kind of an update review on that, because the X-Trans sensor, the beautiful light rendition and color from that mixed with this, I can only imagine would be just unbelievable. So yeah, value for your money, it's based on what you're going to use it for. If you're a social media web guy that just does the occasional, license an image for an 8x10 publication, I would say don't worry about it. If you're a printer and you're all about the image quality, you need resolution, you need to be able to pull pixels out of this thing for days and days, and you actually want to get the best out of your 36 megapixel sensor, grab this now because it's absolutely incredible. Okay, as always, if you guys have any questions, if I forgot to cover something, leave them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you would like to find out more about me and how you can improve your photography, please check out my premium tutorials at findingmiddleearth.com/store.